When Evelyn, the alien ex-wife, stepped onto the Warfront in full battle armor, the air seemed to hold its breath. Every soldier watched her, and for a moment the guns went quiet. Evelyn's heart moved like someone who belonged to two worlds and to none at once. She was tall and lithe, with ears that curved just enough to mark her as not quite human. Her skin had a soft silver tint when light touched it. Soldiers who had seen her in the city markets would say she looked like an elf from old stories, but the Warfront needed no stories. It needed decisions and iron and fast feet. Evelyn carried both grace and the quiet of someone who had fought before. At her side, two dragons followed with steady steps. They were not the huge beast of legend that flattened hills and shook the air. They were smaller, clever, and tightly bonded to her. One was called Rook, dark and fast, eyes bright and sideways. The other was Vale, pale and wide-wind, who kept close to Evelyn like a loyal guard. Both dragons bore small, sleek plates of armor that matched Evelyn's in design. They breathed smoke when they were tired, not flame, and they listened when she spoke in a language only they and she understood. The war had been long. The human fleets came from the inner systems, and the frontier held towns and green hills that used to be quiet. Now these same hills held trenches and watchtowers and the smell of cordite. Evelyn had not come as a general or a spy. She had come because the old promises had broken, and because her name had been called. War calls its own stories into motion. Before the war, Evelyn had been married to Daniel Harlow. Daniel was a commander in the inner fleet, a man with a steady voice and hands that learned to give orders. They had not married for the laws. They had married for a time when the galaxy felt vast and kind. People called Evelyn alien then with a mix of awe and fear. Daniel called her wife, then called her friend, then called her exile. Their marriage did not end with anger or with bright betrayal. It ended with tiredness, with different hopes that pulled them away like separate tides. When the message came asking for Evelyn to appear at the Warfront, Daniel had sent it himself. He had written without flourish. He had written because he trusted only her to see what lay beyond the static on their scanners. He wrote because the men in his command saw something in her presence that made sense for their old stories. He wrote with lines he could not speak and signatures he could not undo. Evelyn read the message in a bunker that smelled of oil. She looked at Rook and Vale. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from a memory. She remembered one night in a small apartment on a wet street, the light outside a dull ribbon, and Daniel holding his coffee like it might burn him. They had said forever in a language of small promises. They had said forever, and it had begun to mean less when the radios grew loud with orders and drones hummed in the sky. She had left because she loved him and could not help being what she was. She had left to protect him from what she had become. Now she would walk back into his world in armor that did not hide who she was. The armor was forged on a moon where the light cut like a blade. It fit her like a second skin. It was not made to look beautiful. It was made to stop bullets and to hold strange energies that hummed under the plates. The dragon's armor was smaller, shaped to their shoulders and tails, and it clicked when they moved. Together they presented a single silhouette against a flat field, a woman and two dragons walking toward the line. Soldiers in the trenches did not know her at first. They looked up and whispered. The rumor traveled like a wind. Evelyn Hart, the alien ex-wife of Commander Daniel Harlow, had come to the Warfront. Some moved closer to see. Some clutched their weapons harder because the sight of something unfamiliar made them fight with more force. In war, new faces are the first test of courage. Evelyn walked with the weight of questions in every step. She pushed aside the immediate talk and focused on the thing that had called her here. A ridge in the field held a broken array of equipment, blackened from a recent clash. Beyond it, the horizon held scattered lights that might have been drones or could have been stars. Her mission was not a mission in the usual sense. She had to stand where a thin line of static grew into screams and to listen. She had to be a bridge between what the inner fleet feared and what the frontier hoped for. When she reached the forward watch, Daniel met her. He stood mid-squad, wearing a uniform that had begun to look like his skin. He was older than in the pictures she kept, and his hair had silver at the temples. His face showed the map of all the commanded knights. For a moment, they did not speak. The world around them continued to move with a slow, stubborn rhythm. Machines droned miles away. Men and women checked gear. A child in a rare courier uniform ran past with a satchel and did not slow. Daniel's eyes met Evelyn's with a look that had many months behind it. He did not say her name the way they used to. He said, "Evelyn." The word was not loud. It was a small, honest sound. "You should not have come here," he said, and his voice tried to be sharp but failed. "I should not be missed," Evelyn said. Her voice was low and steady. "But someone asked me." "And you answer him?" Daniel asked. He did not look angry. He looked only tired. The sound made Evelyn close her hands into the glove at her side. "I answer what calls me," she said. "And I have dragons who answer me as well." Rook nudged her shoulder with the tip of his snout, and Vale lowered his head. The veterans around them watched with a mixture of respect and quiet fear. Old grudges are slow to die in war, but a living link, a dragon at a commander's heel, made old grudges feel small. Daniel led her to the small tent that served as a map room. It smelled of paper and rain and the fatigue of lives held together by coffee. On the table lay a screen that showed flickers of light and a map with tiny red pins. The pins moved as if they had life. They marked strikes and shadows and small noises the scanners could not name. The lead analyst spoke with a voice like a bell and said things with numbers and probabilities. Evelyn listened. She felt the hum under her armor. The plates did not fit merely for protection. They hummed to the field in a way that made the analyst pause. The sound was not audible to ordinary ears, but the machines registered patterns. The armor she wore had an old language built into its seams. It sang. It sang to other things that listened, because long before war, there had been treaties written in metal. In old times, her people had been star travelers. They had made pacts with the world for safe passage and for silence where it was needed. Her armor held one such pact. It meant something to those old circuits when she moved through the field. The dragons had pieces of the same meaning, like a chorus that matched the hymn. No one here understood the full weight of that song. They only felt its effect. At dusk on the first night, a skirmish flared like a match struck by wind. The enemy pressed from the east, small craft like black leaves. The forward guns called out in a rhythm meant to shake the sky. Men shouted and gave orders with fierce hands. The world became raw with the smell of burnt metal and fear. Evelyn walked toward the line. She did not shout. She did not cry for peace. She simply stood. Her armor thrummed, a quiet pulse that reached behind the ears. The dragons moved closer, wings drawn in like shields. Men who had been ready to fire paused because their minds did not reach the reason for the pause, but their bodies obeyed an ancient reflex that told them to listen when a bell rang. For a bright and strange second, the guns spoke and then fell silent. Not all at once, not as if someone ordered them, but as if something had asked them politely to stop. Cannons cooled in the air like a held breath. Bullets stopped mid-flight in a way that could be explained by no engineer. The enemy craft tilted and drifted and, as if confused, turned their prow away. Silence is not empty. It fills the spaces between heartbeats and makes them loud. In that silence, Evelyn closed her eyes and remembered the night she walked away. She recalled Daniel's hand catching hers. She felt every small memory, the smell of bread, the way he sang badly when the rain beat on the roof. She felt the weight of all those small things and the huge weight of the field before her. A child soldier stepped forward near the trench line. He had never seen an alien up close. He had never seen dragons. He called out, "Are you a god?" The question was raw and honest. Evelyn looked down at him as if she had seen such questions 1,000 times. "I am Evelyn," she said. "I am older than your engines and younger than your stories. I am tired." The child laughed and then began to cry because the world had suddenly grown too large for his small hands. A sergeant moved to pull him back, but Evelyn lifted a hand and the sergeant paused. "You are not alone tonight," she said. "Your fight matters. But not every fight must be against what you do not know." Daniel watched her with a face that held many unspoken things. He had told her once that the world needed her abilities. He had told her once that it was better to keep distance because people feared what they do not understand. He looked now at the field before him and at the small human faces that had awaited orders. He heard the guns in the distance grow quiet. He thought of the old days and the nights when choices were small. "Stay," he said softly. "Stay for a while." Evelyn understood more than he knew. She came to the Warfront not to replace commanders or to take positions. She came to show that something old still lived and that the old music could be heard. She came because sometimes a single person can tilt a line and cause a new story to begin. That night the camp slept with a small ease it had not known. The dragons curled by the tents like odd sentries. Evelyn watched the sky and saw stars that she remembered from other places. She kept her armor within reach. She kept the memory of Daniel like a coin in a pocket. The war had not ended. It would not end with a single silence. But tonight there was a breathing room in which plans could change. In the dark, Evelyn visited the small stack of letters and a simple photo Daniel had kept from their married days. She did not weep. Tears did not come easily to someone who had learned to save every drop of emotion for the moment it mattered most. She thought of how things shift, how alliances form and break, and how sometimes love becomes something different than what people expect. Above all, she thought of why she had come. The war demanded a new language to speak to both metal and heart. The dragon slept, and Evelyn listened to the hum in her armor. In the quiet of that hour, she found a promise she could try to keep. She would not change the past. She would try to protect those who could not protect themselves and to remind leaders like Daniel that the smallest acts can redirect a war. Dawn would bring new orders, new scouts, and perhaps a new test of the strange quiet she had made. For now, the Warfront held its breath, and Evelyn held the memory of a life that once seemed whole. The story had begun with a step across a ridge. The rest would come in the sound of boots and wings and the slow, fragile hope that a single woman and 2 dragons could matter. The next dawn broke with the taste of smoke on the wind, yet the Warfront still remembered the night of silence. And when Evelyn stepped forward with her dragons, everyone wondered if the fragile peace would hold or shatter. The sunrise on the Warfront came as a pale gray wash across the trenches. The clouds above were streaked with copper dust from old explosions, and the air smelled of burnt grass. Evelyn stood near the edge of the ridge, her armor faintly humming, the 2 dragons beside her. Vale stretched his wings to test the cold air, and Rook nosed the dirt as if searching for hidden tracks. The soldiers watched her from a careful distance. They had grown used to long nights of battle and brief mornings of restless sleep, but they had not grown used to the sight of an elf-like woman who walked as if the earth answered to her steps, or of 2 dragons who kept watch like living sentries. Commander Daniel Harlow arrived with the first scouting report. His uniform bore fresh streaks of dust, and the circles under his eyes were deeper than the night before. He stood a few feet away from Evelyn and spoke in his usual low, even tone. "The enemy retreated further east," he said. "They didn't fire a single shot all night. Our drones reported strange movement beyond the ridge, but no attacks." Evelyn tilted her head slightly, the silver strands of her hair catching the faint light. "They were listening," she said. Her voice was quiet, yet the words carried weight. Something in the field answered them. The silence is not just fear. It is recognition. Daniel frowned at her words. "Recognition? Of what?" "Of the old packs," Evelyn replied. "Before humans built fleets and claimed systems, before my people lost their homeworld, we wrote promises in metal and stone. Some of the weapons you face out there were built from that metal. They remember." Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then shifted his gaze to the horizon. "We can't rely on memories to keep us safe. We need to know if they'll come back." "They will," Evelyn said softly. "But not today." The camp came to life with the slow rhythm of preparation. Soldiers repaired trenches, tended to the wounded, and rebuilt the burned watchtowers. Evelyn moved among them, speaking little. Some nodded to her in respect, while others kept their eyes lowered, unsure if her presence was a blessing or a curse. A young medic named Claire approached Evelyn near the supply tents. Claire had sandy hair tucked under her helmet and eyes that carried too much sorrow for someone so young. "Ma'am," Claire said, hesitating before the title, "I wanted to thank you. My brother was on the East Line last night. He says he felt something, like the air telling him to stop shooting. It saved him." Evelyn studied the girl's face, then placed a gloved hand lightly on her shoulder. "Your brother saved himself," she said. "I only reminded him that there's a choice in every moment." Claire nodded, tears glinting in her eyes, and hurried back to her work. By midday, scouts reported strange disturbances in the abandoned villages east of the ridge. A small team was chosen to investigate. Daniel asked Evelyn to join them. The journey took them through dry grasslands dotted with shattered vehicles and husks of drones. The air shimmered faintly from hidden energy fields left behind by past skirmishes. Rook sniffed the wind, his scales twitching, while Vale walked with his wings folded tight, his steps leaving soft prints in the soil. As they entered the ruined village, the silence grew heavy. Broken walls stood like teeth against the sky. A rusted water tower creaked in the breeze. A small child's toy, a stuffed animal torn and faded, lay in the dirt. Evelyn paused, sensing a hum beneath the ground. She knelt, pressing her armored palm against the soil. A faint vibration pulsed back, rhythmic and almost sorrowful. "They left something behind," she murmured. "What is it?" Daniel asked, stepping closer. "Not a weapon," Evelyn said. "A beacon, calling for something older than either of us." Before she could say more, Vale gave a sharp growl, his pale wings flaring slightly. Rook crouched low, his eyes fixed on a shadow at the edge of the street. A figure emerged thin, wrapped in dark tattered cloth, carrying a jagged staff of strange alloy. The figure's voice came out hoarse but steady. "You do not belong here, Elf." Daniel raised his rifle, but Evelyn raised a hand to stop him. She stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the stranger. "And yet I am here," she replied. "Who are you to guard ruins?" The stranger tilted his head. His eyes glowed faintly, not with the light of life, but with the reflection of some ancient machine's core. "I am the last keeper of the first pact. And you," his voice faltered for a moment, "you wear the armor of the lost line. The machines will answer you." That is why they stopped. Daniel exchanged a look with Evelyn. What does he mean? Evelyn's gaze softened, but her voice stayed calm. "Long ago, when my people crossed the stars, we left behind codes in the world's machines. We believed that if war ever reached such places, the old code would remind even weapons of what they were built for: defense, not destruction." The Keeper's eyes narrowed. "The code is dying. The enemy you face now has learned to silence it. The silence you felt last night will not last. They come with a new song, one that teaches even old machines to hate." The revelation sent a chill through the small team. They left the ruins with heavy hearts, bringing the Keeper with them. He was weak, but his mind held fragments of knowledge the command desperately needed. Back at the Warfront, Daniel convened a council in the map tent. Evelyn stood beside him, the dragons resting just outside, their eyes half closed but alert. "The Keeper says the enemy has found a way to break the old code," Daniel told the officers. "If that's true, the silence won't happen again. We'll be facing not just soldiers, but weapons that no longer hesitate." An older captain muttered, "Then we're finished." "No," Evelyn said firmly. "The code still lives in some of the weapons. I can feel it in the field. It's weak, but it's there. We have to find the core, an old relay buried beneath the first colony site. If we can wake it, the code will spread again." Daniel looked at her. "That site's deep in enemy territory." "I know," she replied. "But it's the only way." Night fell again over the Warfront. Fires burned low in the trenches, and the soldiers' murmurs were hushed. Evelyn stood on the ridge, staring eastward at the distant glow of enemy lines. The dragons sat close on either side of her, their breath slow and even. Daniel approached quietly. For a long moment, they both looked out at the same horizon. "Do you ever regret leaving?" he asked at last. Evelyn's silver-lit profile stayed still. "Every day," she said softly. "But regret is a shadow. It follows, it doesn't lead." Daniel lowered his gaze. "We'll have to enter enemy lines for that relay. I don't like it. But if it can save lives," Evelyn turned to him, "we do what we must. And we remember why." In the cold wind of the early hours, Evelyn rested her hand on Rook's armored neck. The dragon stirred, sensing the coming mission. She whispered something in her own tongue, and both beasts gave a low rumble in reply. The Warfront was quiet, but the silence now felt fragile, like a thin layer of ice over dark water. Evelyn knew the next part of their journey would break that silence, and what they found beneath it might change the course of the war. The journey to the old relay began before sunrise, when the Warfront still held its breath. Evelyn knew that beyond the lines lay more than enemies, something older waited to wake. The night sky above the Warfront still shimmered with distant fires when Evelyn prepared to leave. Her armor's soft hum was steady and calm, like a heartbeat that did not belong to flesh. Vale stretched his pale wings in silence, while Rook paced, his claws scraping the rocky ground. The dragons sensed the weight of the coming journey. Commander Daniel Harlow stood near the edge of the camp. His gaze was fixed on the dark horizon where the enemy lines lay. He said little as the team gathered 6 soldiers chosen for their skill and courage. Evelyn with her dragons, and the old keeper wrapped in a heavy cloak. "We move before dawn," Daniel said at last. "We'll guide you past the watchpoints as far as the ridge. Beyond that, you're on your own." Evelyn looked at him, her silver-lit eyes steady. "Keep the line safe while we're gone." Daniel's mouth tightened into something like a brief smile. "Come back alive, Evelyn. Don't give me another regret." She gave no answer to that, but turned and signaled to her dragons. The team set out, their boots crunching on the frosted ground as the faint light of morning touched the east. The land beyond the ridge was silent in a way that made soldiers uneasy. It was the silence of abandoned places, of wind moving through hollow shells of what had once been villages. Here and there, burned-out drones lay half-buried in dust, their eyes dark. The keeper walked with surprising steadiness for someone so thin. His staff glowed faintly at its tip, sensing currents beneath the soil. Every so often he muttered words in a language no one else knew. "Are you praying?" one of the soldiers asked cautiously. The keeper glanced at him, then shook his head. "Not praying, listening." Evelyn walked at the front, scanning the land. She felt a low vibration through the soles of her boots, a faint echo that came and went like a distant drumbeat. She had felt it before in old ruins, the trace of machines that remembered the first packs. "Closer," she murmured. By midday, they reached a shallow valley. The hills on either side were scarred by bombardment, their slopes dotted with black craters. As the team moved through the valley, Vale stiffened suddenly, his wings half spreading in warning. Evelyn raised a hand for the team to halt. She crouched and pressed her palm against the earth. The hum was stronger here, but tangled, as if 2 songs were fighting. "They've seeded the valley," the keeper said grimly. "Old machines sleeping beneath the soil. They wake at the sound of enemy steps." "Can we avoid them?" asked the squad leader. Evelyn shook her head. "Not all. But we can walk softly." She led the way forward with measured steps. The dragons followed carefully, their claws barely stirring the dust. The soldiers did their best to match her quiet pace. For a time, it worked. The valley held its breath and let them pass. Near the far edge of the valley, a young soldier stumbled on a loose stone. The sharp clatter rang out, a small sound that echoed too loudly. A faint ripple spread beneath the soil. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Run," she said. The ground behind them cracked open as a rusted but still deadly sentry drone rose up, its limbs clicking. Red light blinked in its single eye. Rook leapt before it could fire, his armored body slamming into the machine's side. The impact knocked the drone backward into the dirt, but 2 more stirred from beneath the ground. The squad opened fire as Vale swooped low, his wings striking another drone with the force of a hammer. Sparks flew as metal met claw. Evelyn stood firm in the center of the chaos. She raised her hand slightly, and the hum in her armor deepened, turning into a low tone that resonated in the ground. The drones faltered. For a brief moment, their red eyes dimmed as if remembering something long forgotten. "Hold," she called to the soldiers. "Don't destroy them if you don't have to." The keeper stepped forward, thrusting his staff into the soil. The glow at its tip flared, spreading a pulse that rippled through the valley. The remaining drones froze, their weapons lowering. The fight ended as suddenly as it had begun. The soldiers stared in wary amazement. "They still hear the old code," Evelyn said quietly. But only barely. By the time they reached the far hills, the team was weary. The valley lay silent once more, but the memory of the skirmish weighed heavily on them. They made camp in the shelter of a rocky outcrop as the sky grew dim with the coming of night. The keeper sat near the fire, his staff laid across his knees. His eyes reflected the flames as he spoke in a low voice. The relay you seek lies beneath the first colony site, beyond the broken riverbed. It was built when humans and your kind still worked as partners. If it still sleeps, it may wake to your call. Evelyn nodded. And if the enemy reaches it first? The keeper's expression hardened. Then it will be twisted into a new voice, one that silences everything we ever built. Vale shifted beside Evelyn, laying his pale head near her boots. Rook remained awake, his dark eyes scanning the darkness beyond the firelight. One of the younger soldiers broke the quiet. Commander Harlow. Do you think he's still? He stopped, realizing the question was not for a campfire. Evelyn looked up at the stars. Daniel is a man who carries his duty first. Whatever else he feels is locked behind that. No one spoke after that. The night deepened, filled only with the soft breaths of the dragons and the distant moan of the wind over ruined hills. Before dawn they moved again. The air grew colder as they descended toward the riverbed. The river had long dried up, leaving behind the wide channel of cracked earth and broken bridges. As they entered the channel, the keeper stopped abruptly, his staff tapping the ground. They've set wards, he whispered. Traps to keep us from the relay. Evelyn studied the fractured earth ahead. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the remnants of the bridge pylons, markings of the enemy, meant to disrupt the old code. We can break through, she said. But it will wake them. The soldiers gripped their rifles. Vale hissed softly, and Rook lowered his head, ready to charge. Then we wake them, the squad leader said grimly. Better we face them now than let them find us sleeping. Evelyn stepped forward, placing her palm against one of the glowing symbols. The hum of her armor changed, rising in pitch. The symbols flickered as if uncertain. She looked back at the team. Be ready. Once we pass, they will come. The riverbed beyond stretched like a scar across the land. At its far edge, half buried beneath a fallen arch of stone, stood a dark structure, a doorway of smooth alloy, older than any settlement nearby. Even from a distance, Evelyn felt the faint pull of the relay hidden below. She also felt the approach of something else, an answering presence, sharp and cold. The enemy knows, she said. No one had time to speak before the first wave came, swift and silent. Machines shaped like predatory birds, gliding low with blades folded against their sides. Vale roared, leaping into the air, his pale wings striking one from the sky. Rook darted forward, his claws tearing into another. The squad fought with fierce precision, their rifles cutting down the swift attackers. But more came, their dark forms pouring from the eastern dunes. Evelyn stood at the forefront, her armor blazing with the hum of old codes. She raised both arms, and the ground trembled as if answering her. The ancient doorway ahead glowed faintly, as if awakening. The battle for the relay had begun. The ancient doorway glowed as if it had waited centuries for Evelyn's return. But as the enemy descended in waves, the light of hope threatened to be swallowed by the dark tide of war. The riverbed was alive with noise and motion. The dry earth trembled under the clash of claw against steel, the hum of old power, and the crack of rifles. The team fought in a tight circle near the half-buried doorway, defending their ground while Evelyn focused on the sleeping relay. Vale swept low over the battlefield, his pale wings scattering dust as his tail lashed through two enemy machines at once. Rook darted among the attackers like a dark shadow, his claws striking with speed and precision. Sparks lit the dim dawn as metal shattered beneath their blows. Hold the line, the squad leader shouted over the chaos. Evelyn stood before the ancient door, her hands pressed to the smooth alloy. Her armor glowed faintly at the seams, resonating with the dormant structure beneath the ground. She could feel the relay's heartbeat slow, buried, but still alive. Come back to us, she whispered, her words not for any human ear. The war is not done, and we still need your voice. Behind her, a soldier cried out as a drone swooped in. Rook lunged, pulling the machine away before it could strike. The dragons moved as one, their bond with Evelyn as natural as breath. The enemy came in greater numbers now. Sleek black machines leapt across the cracked riverbed, their limbs shifting to blades and cannons. Their eyes glowed with a harsh white light, unlike the red of the older drones. These were newer, crafted to resist the old code's influence. The keeper raised his staff, chanting in the old tongue. Faint ripples spread from the staff's tip, slowing some of the advancing machines. But others pressed forward, their programming hardened against such interference. A young soldier near the edge of the circle looked at Evelyn. "Ma'am, we can't hold them much longer." Evelyn kept her palms against the doorway, her eyes closed as if listening to something deep beneath the earth. "Buy me a little more time," she said quietly. "The relay is almost awake." Daniel's voice came through the squad leader's comm device, sharp and urgent. "Report. We're picking up heavy movement on your location." The leader shouted back, "We're under full assault." Evelyn's trying to activate the relay. There was a pause before Daniel's voice returned, lower but steady. "Hold your ground. I'm sending reinforcements, but they'll take time to reach you. Don't let the enemy take that site." Evelyn felt the hum beneath her hand shift, like an old engine catching its first spark after years of silence. She opened her eyes. Faint lines of blue light spread from the seams of the doorway across the riverbed like roots breaking through soil. The machines nearest to her faltered, their movements jerking as if something deep within them was listening to that light. But others, those shaped with the enemy's new code, only grew more aggressive. They rushed forward, their blades tearing through the ground. Vale swooped down in front of Evelyn, his massive body blocking a lunging drone. The creature's claws scraped across his armor, leaving shallow grooves but no real harm. Vale snarled, and the heat of his breath steamed in the cold air. Rook leapt from behind, slamming the drone to the ground and tearing it apart with swift, precise strikes. The battle raged for long minutes that felt like hours. Dust and smoke filled the air, mingling with the scent of hot metal. Soldiers shouted, dragons roared, machines screamed in grinding bursts. Finally, the doorway gave a deep, resonant chime, a sound that was both metallic and strangely alive. The lines of blue light brightened, spreading farther into the earth. Evelyn stepped back, breathing hard. "It's awake." The keeper lifted his staff, and the glow at its tip grew stronger. He turned to the soldiers. "Protect her. The relay will answer her voice, but it needs her focus." Evelyn knelt, placing both palms on the ground. She began to speak in the old language of her people, the words flowing softly but carrying power that rippled through the soil and into the relay below. At first, nothing seemed to change. Then, a wave of faint blue light rolled outward from beneath the ground, passing under the soldiers, the dragons, the wrecked machines. It reached the advancing enemy. Some of the older machines staggered and stopped, their weapons lowering as if they had forgotten their purpose. But the newer ones shrieked, a harsh metallic sound, and their blades flared with pale fire as they pushed forward against the wave. The keeper grimaced. "They are resisting the code. They've learned too much." Evelyn's voice grew stronger, her words steady even as the battle raged around her. She could feel the relay listening, reaching out like a great, slow mind waking from a long sleep. The squad leader fired at a machine that had slipped past the dragons. "We can't hold forever," he shouted. "You won't have to," Evelyn said through clenched teeth. Her armor pulsed with a bright blue glow, resonating with the relay. The ground beneath the enemy cracked as thin tendrils of light rose, wrapping around the legs of the advancing machines. Those touched by the light faltered, their weapons lowering. Some collapsed, their power sources gone still. The soldiers' cheers were brief. The largest of the enemy machines, a towering figure shaped like a beast of iron and wire, strode through the faltering ranks. Its heavy step shook the earth, and its blazing eyes fixed on Evelyn. Vale spread his wings and launched himself forward with a roar. The giant swung one massive arm, striking Vale mid-air and sending him crashing into the dirt. "Vale!" Evelyn's voice rang out, but the dragon pushed himself up, shaking off the blow. Rook leapt onto the giant's back, tearing at the cables along its spine, but the machine roared, spinning to throw him off. Evelyn rose, her silver hair catching the glow of the relay's light. She stepped forward, standing between the beast and the weakened soldiers. Her armor's hum rose to a steady, resonant note, like the tone of a great bell. She raised one hand toward the towering machine. Remember what you were made for." The giant paused. For a heartbeat, it hesitated, as if the old code buried deep within its circuits fought against the new commands. Its blazing eyes flickered. Rook seized the moment, lunging for its neck, while Vale surged upward and struck with the full force of his wings and claws. The machine staggered, then toppled forward, crashing into the dirt with a heavy thud. The remaining enemy machines faltered as the relay's blue light spread farther, seeping into their cores. One by one they went still, their weapons lowering. The battlefield grew quiet, except for the ragged breaths of the soldiers and the distant hum of the awakened relay. Evelyn lowered her arm, her breath slow but steady. She turned to check on Vale and Rook. Both dragons bore scratches and dents in their armor, but they stood strong, their eyes fixed on her with unwavering loyalty. The keeper approached, leaning on his staff. "You did it. The relay remembers. For now," Evelyn said softly. "But the enemy won't give up. They'll come again, with more machines that don't listen." She looked eastward, toward the distant horizon where the enemy forces gathered. "We've won a battle," she murmured. "Not the war." The soldiers began tending to their wounded, while others secured the fallen machines to study later. The first rays of morning broke over the riverbed, glinting off the relay's glowing lines. For the first time in many days, the soldiers allowed themselves a small spark of hope. But Evelyn, standing tall between her two dragons, knew the hardest choices still lay ahead. The enemy's final weapon descended from the sky, vast enough to darken the battlefield. Evelyn knew the next few hours would decide not only their survival, but the fate of every world still resisting the enemy. The dawn that had barely broken over the riverbed was soon swallowed by a shadow. A shape like a city turned upside down drifted across the horizon. Its dark metal skin caught the rising sunlight in hard, cold edges. The soldiers fell silent as they looked upward. The air itself seemed to grow heavy. "The enemy's flagship," the keeper whispered, gripping his staff. "We are out of time." Vale shifted uneasily, his wings tensing as if to leap into the sky. Rook crouched low, his tail lashing the ground in restless arcs. Evelyn watched the descending giant with calm eyes. She had faced many battles before, but the size of the flagship was unlike anything she had seen. She could feel its presence pressing against the very code she had awakened in the relay. Daniel's voice came sharply over the comm. "Evelyn, report." She replied without looking away from the sky. "The relay is awake, but the flagship has arrived. We'll need every unit you can spare." There was a pause. When Daniel spoke again, his voice carried a strange mix of determination and regret. "I'm on my way. We can't let them take this site." "Hold as long as you can." The soldiers moved quickly, setting up heavier cannons and digging shallow trenches around the relay. The glow beneath the earth had grown stronger overnight, humming like a living heartbeat. Evelyn knelt at the relay once more, touching the glowing lines. She closed her eyes, focusing on the pulse of its old memory. She could feel it ancient, vast, slow like the turning of distant stars. The relay had been built not as a weapon, but as a bridge. Its true purpose was to connect worlds and minds, to weave harmony where war had torn rifts. That memory stirred faintly as she called to it. The flagship loomed closer, its underside opening like the petals of a black iron flower. From it descended a steady stream of war machines, larger and stronger than those faced before. Some bore shields of shifting light. Others moved on 6 limbs, their spines lined with sharp protrusions that glowed with a pale inner fire. The soldiers opened fire as soon as the first wave hit the ground. Their bullets sparked against the shields of the leading machines. Vale and Rook roared as they launched forward. Vale's fire lit the morning sky in a blaze of red and gold, melting the shields of 2 machines before they could advance. Rook moved with swift precision, striking at weak points in the armor of those that pushed through. But the enemy kept coming. The ground trembled as heavier machines landed, each impact sending up clouds of dust and shaking loose stones from the cliffs. A soldier near Evelyn called out over the gunfire. "We can't hold them for long. We need something more." Evelyn rose, her silver hair catching the blue glow from the relay. "We will not match them with guns alone," she said. "We must wake the relay fully. We must remind it what it was meant to do." She turned to Vale and Rook. Hold them back for as long as you can. Dragons growled in answer, as if they understood. Evelyn stepped into the heart of the glowing lines. The light rose around her feet, curling upward like living mist. She began to speak in the old tongue again, her voice soft, yet carrying across the battlefield. At first the words seemed to vanish into the air. Then the ground beneath her trembled, not with the weight of enemy machines, but with something deeper. A new light spread from the relay, brighter and steadier than before. The soldiers felt it pass through them like a calm breeze, yet the enemy machines nearest to it jerked as if struck by an unseen force. A massive enemy war machine charged forward, ignoring the light. Vale lunged to meet it, but the machine's reinforced shield held fast. The dragon's claws scraped against the glowing barrier, sending sparks flying. Rook darted beneath it, slashing at the joints of its legs, but the machine swung down a heavy blade, narrowly missing him. Evelyn kept chanting, her eyes closed, her hands outstretched toward the relay. The keeper stepped beside her, raising his staff high. He added his own voice to the chant, older and rougher, yet somehow in harmony with Evelyn's. Above them, the flagship pulsed with a deep, red glow. From its underside, a column of light descended, striking the battlefield with a low, resonant hum. The air grew heavy, the light pressing down like a physical weight. Even Vale staggered under it, wings lowering as he braced himself. Evelyn opened her eyes. She knew what it was, a dampening field meant to choke the old code, to silence the relay before it could fully wake. She stepped forward, standing between the glowing relay and the descending red light. Her armor shimmered in defiance, the blue glow fighting against the heavy red. Daniel's voice came again, faint through the interference. "Evelyn, we're almost there." "Hold on." She did not answer. She could feel the relay straining beneath her feet, like a sleeper trying to rise under a great weight. She reached out her hand, touching the blue glow at her chest to the light beneath her. "Remember," she whispered, "you were built to connect, not to destroy. You were made to unite what was torn apart. Wake now and let them hear your voice." The light beneath her feet surged upward, meeting the red glow head-on. A deep sound echoed across the battlefield, like a bell struck at the heart of the world. The nearest enemy machines faltered, their red-lit eyes flickering to blue for a heartbeat before they went dark, collapsing where they stood. Vale and Rook surged forward again, striking down those that still resisted. The soldiers renewed their fire, emboldened by the sudden shift. But the flagship above remained unmoved. It began to lower itself toward the earth, vast and implacable. Evelyn looked up at it, her eyes steady. The war had turned, but the greatest battle was still to come. The flagship's shadow swallowed the sky as if night had fallen again. Evelyn knew that if she failed now, the relay's light would vanish forever, and with it, the last hope of humankind. The great black vessel settled into the torn riverbed like a mountain coming to rest. Its vast underside opened again, and from the hollow belly came a single figure, tall, clad in segmented armor that glowed with an inner red light. Its face was hidden behind a smooth visor, but its voice rolled across the battlefield, deep and cold. "Turn off the relay," it said. "Stand down or be unmade." The soldiers shifted uneasily. Vale spread his wings and let out a low, rumbling growl. Rook crouched, ready to leap. Evelyn stood between the soldiers and the approaching figure. Her armor glowed with the relay's soft blue light, as if the earth itself had chosen her as its voice. "This war was never ours to begin," she called back. "You twisted what was meant to connect us all." The figure tilted its head slightly. "You still cling to the old codes. They are dead. You woke a relic that cannot save you." Evelyn took a step forward. "The relay remembers. It remembers every world that stood together. It remembers what you were, before you turned your own kind into weapons." The figure raised one hand. A ripple of red light spread outward, and the nearest wrecked machines began to twitch and stir, rising again like puppets on invisible strings. "Hold the line," the squad leader shouted. The soldiers opened fire, but the revived machines pressed forward relentlessly. Vale roared, surging into their ranks with fire and wings, scattering them like dry leaves. Rook darted low, cutting at their legs to bring them down. The air filled with smoke and sparks. But the red-clad figure kept advancing, untouched, each step measured and steady. Evelyn stepped deeper into the relay's glow. The blue light beneath her feet brightened, spreading in slow pulses. She closed her eyes and spoke again in the old tongue, each word drawn from a memory older than the war. The ground shuddered. From the heart of the relay, a deep hum rose, a note so low that it could be felt more than heard. It rolled across the battlefield like a living heartbeat. The revived machines faltered. Some froze in mid-stride, their red-lit eyes dimming. Others turned their heads as if listening to something distant and forgotten. The red figure stopped, its visor turned toward Evelyn. "You are wasting what little strength you have. The code you serve is fading." Evelyn opened her eyes. "No," she said simply. "It is remembering." Vale landed heavily beside her, his flanks streaked with soot and blood. Rook limped slightly but kept his head high, his eyes locked on the enemy leader. The keeper moved closer, lifting his staff. "You cannot do this alone," he said softly. Evelyn nodded once. "I don't have to." She placed her hand on Vale's side. A thin line of blue light ran from her armor into his scales. She reached for Rook with her other hand, and the same light flowed into him as well. The dragons shivered as if waking from a long sleep. Their eyes glowed brighter, not just with their own fire, but with the relay's soft blue memory. The red figure raised both hands, and the earth cracked as more war machines burst up from the soil. Hidden reserves called into battle. Evelyn stepped forward to meet them. The blue light around her spread, flowing like water over the torn ground, reaching for the relay lines that glowed beneath the earth. She raised her voice so that it carried over the clash of metal and the roar of dragons. Enough. The word was simple, but carried the weight of centuries. It rippled through the blue light like a wave. The revived machines staggered and fell still. Even the new ones paused for a breath, as if the command had reached them. The red figure lifted one hand as if to strike, but in that moment, Vale leapt. His great wings beat the air in a thunderous rhythm as he slammed into the enemy leader. The two crashed into the earth, sending up a cloud of dust. Rook followed, tearing at the enemy's armor where it had cracked under Vale's impact. The red figure struggled, striking back with bursts of searing energy that scorched the ground. Vale roared in pain but did not let go. Evelyn took another step forward until she stood in the very heart of the relay's glow. The blue light rose around her like a tide. She closed her eyes once more and spoke, not to the enemy, not even to the soldiers, but to the great ancient network beneath the soil. "We are all children of the same code. We forgot. Help us remember." The ground gave a great shudder. Light poured upward, not just from the relay, but from far across the horizon, as if other sleeping relays were answering the call. The sky itself seemed to brighten, even beneath the flagship shadow. The red figure froze beneath Vale's weight. Its visor flickered. The red glow around it dimmed as threads of blue light traced across its armor. For a long heartbeat, the battlefield was silent. Then the figure spoke, but its voice was different, lower, almost human. "I remember." It looked at Evelyn, as if seeing her for the first time. This war was not what we were made for. The flagship above gave a deep, rumbling groan. Its red lights dimmed and shifted to blue, one by one. The machines that still stood lowered their weapons. The soldiers lowered theirs too, uncertain. Evelyn stepped forward, meeting the figure's gaze. "Then stand with us. Help us rebuild what was lost." The figure bowed its head slightly. "We will try." Vale stepped back, releasing the battered armor. Rook limped to Evelyn's side. The dragons stood like sentinels as the dawnlight finally broke through the last clouds of dust and smoke. The battlefield lay silent except for the hum of the awakened relay, which now pulsed in a calm, steady rhythm. The war was not entirely over. But in that moment, hope returned, not as a fragile spark, but as a living thread that bound together soldiers, dragons, machines, and the worlds they all had nearly lost. Evelyn looked to the rising sun and whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." But we are no longer alone. Subscribe now and follow Evelyn's journey with Vale and Rook in this unforgettable HFY sci-fi adventure. Don't miss the next chapter of courage, hope, and the battle for a united future.